At the bottom of Blackthorn Wash, Jonah Vale found a silk glove moving where nothing alive should have moved. The stagecoach lay on its side in the red dust, one wheel still turning in the wind. With a slow, tired squeak, the horses were gone. The driver's box was split open. Mail sacks were scattered across the wash like dead birds, and a trail of black powder marked the stones where someone had fired into the coach before it rolled. Jonah had not come there for trouble. He had come looking for a stray mare that had broken through his south fence before dawn. He was a widower with 40 acres of poor grass, a 2-room cabin, and no appetite for other people's wars. 6 years earlier, fever had taken his wife and little boy within 8 days of each other. Since then, Jonah had learned to live carefully. He kept his rifle clean, his words few, and his heart behind a locked door. So when he saw the wreck, his first thought was to ride away. Then the blue silk glove moved again. It was caught beneath the coach, pinned between a cracked step-board and the hard pan. Not flapping, not trembling from the wind, moving with the weak, desperate rhythm of fingers trying to be seen. Jonah dismounted. He walked toward the wreck with his rifle half raised, listening to the kind of silence that comes after violence. No birds, no insects, no voices. Only the wheel squeaking above him and that small blue glove dragging against the dust. He crouched beside the coach and pulled at the broken step-board. It did not move. He braced one boot against the axle, gritted his teeth, and tore the wood loose. A hand slipped free. It was slender, pale with dust, and far too soft for the territory. Around the wrist was a torn lace cuff, dirty now, but still finer than anything Jonah had seen within 50 miles of Blackthorn. He leaned closer. Behind the stepboard, wedged inside the narrow luggage compartment, was a young woman. Her face was streaked with ash. Her dark auburn hair had come loose from its pins. Her riding dress was ripped along one sleeve, but the cloth itself told the truth before she ever could. It was expensive wool, Eastern cut, a lady's garment dragged through a butcher's road. Jonah placed 2 fingers beneath her jaw. A breath touched his skin, thin but alive. For a long moment he did nothing. The smart thing was clear. Leave the wreck. Get to town. Tell the marshal. Let men with badges and paper decide what to do with her. But the nearest town was 3 hours away. The sun was falling, and whoever had emptied that coach might still be close enough to return. The woman's fingers tightened around the blue glove. Jonah saw his wife's hand in his memory then. Small, fever-hot, slipping out of his before dawn. He closed his eyes once. Then he lifted the stranger from the wreck. She weighed almost nothing. Her head fell against his shoulder as if she had spent every last part of herself staying hidden. Jonah wrapped her in his saddle blanket, set her across his mare, and tied the torn blue glove to his saddle horn without knowing why. Maybe because it was proof. Maybe because something about it felt like a question he had not yet earned the right to ask. The ride back to his cabin took longer than it should have. Twice he stopped to listen behind them. Once he saw dust on a far ridge and waited with his rifle ready until it faded into the evening light. By the time he reached home, the sky had gone purple. His cabin was small, plain, and built for one man who did not expect visitors. A table, a stove, 2 chairs, though one was never used. A bed with a quilt his wife had sewn before the fever year. Jonah hesitated at the doorway with the young woman in his arms. Then he carried her inside and laid her on the bed. He cleaned the ash from her face. He washed a cut above her brow. He checked her ribs, her wrists, the bruising along one shoulder. She did not wake, but when he spooned water to her lips, she swallowed. On the 3rd spoonful, she whispered one word, "No." Jonah stopped. Her eyelids fluttered, but she was still trapped somewhere behind them. "No papers," she breathed. "Burn them." Then she went still again. Jonah looked toward the torn blue glove hanging beside the door. On the cuff, beneath a smear of soot, a tiny crest had been stitched in silver thread. A hawk holding a key. No ranch wife wore a thing like that. No schoolteacher rode through the territory dressed like that, and no ordinary passenger whispered about papers before asking where she was. Jonah fed the stove, sat in the unused chair, and waited through the night with his rifle across his knees. By morning, the woman was still alive. She woke just after sunrise, when the first stripe of light crossed the quilt. Her eyes opened sharply. Not slow like someone rising from sleep, but fast like someone expecting a blade. Jonah stayed by the stove. "You're safe," he said. She looked around the room, at the rough plank walls, at the drying herbs above the window, at the rifle near his hand. Her gaze caught on the blue glove by the door, and the fear returned. "Where am I?" "Blackthorn Valley." Her throat moved. "Arizona?" "Close enough." She tried to sit. Pain bent her forward, and Jonah stepped toward her. She flinched. He stopped where he was. "Don't," he said gently. "You cracked a rib, maybe two. You stand too fast, you'll meet the floor." She watched him the way a cornered deer watches an open gate. "What happened to the coach?" she asked. Jonah studied her face. "You tell me." Her eyes lowered. The answer did not come. He brought her broth in a tin cup. She took it with both hands. Even weak, even dirty, she held the cup like it belonged in a parlor, not a cabin, back straight. Fingers careful, manners living in the bones. "Your name?" Jonah asked. "Maribel." The name came too clean. Jonah nodded as if he believed it. "Jonah Vale." That was the whole introduction. For 3 days she slept more than she spoke. Jonah kept the fire low, changed the cloth on her brow, and left food where she could reach it. He asked almost nothing, not because he lacked curiosity, but because he knew fear. Questions could feel like hands. By the 4th morning, Mara was strong enough to walk from the bed to the table. By the 5th, she insisted on helping. Jonah gave her the safest work he could find: shelling beans, folding dried cloth, holding a lantern while he mended a harness. She approached every task as if it were a lesson from a language she had only read about. She did not know how to light kindling without smoking the room. She had never milked a goat. She looked at the iron pump like it was a machine designed to humble her personally. But she did not complain. When the pump handle snapped back and struck her palm, she pressed her lips together, blinked once, and tried again. Jonah noticed that more than he meant to. He noticed the way she hid pain, the way she measured a room before entering it, the way she turned whenever a hoofbeat sounded in the distance, the way her accent softened when she was tired, revealing something older and colder than Boston or Philadelphia. One evening, rain tapped lightly on the roof. Jonah sat sharpening a skinning knife while Mara read from a month-old newspaper he had brought from town. He had handed it to her without thinking. She read aloud in a calm, polished voice, moving through railroad tariffs, territorial disputes, and a notice from Denver about a missing foreign heiress. Then she stopped. The silence told Jonah before her face did. He looked up. The paper trembled once in her hands. "What did it say?" he asked. "Nothing." Jonah set the knife down. "Mara." She folded the paper carefully and placed it on the table as if carefulness could erase ink. "It is not your burden." "There's a burned coach in my valley," he said. 2 dead horses missing. A woman in my bed with a crest on her glove. Men may come here thinking I know something. That makes part of it my burden, whether you like it or not. Her eyes shone, but her voice stayed controlled. "You should have left me in the wash." Jonah's jaw tightened. "No. Then you have made yourself a target for people who do not stop because a man asks them nicely." "I wasn't planning to ask nicely." For the first time since waking, Mara almost smiled. It vanished quickly. The next morning, Jonah rode to Blackthorn Station for flour, cartridges, and news. The town was hardly more than one street and a water tower, a general store, a livery, a telegraph office, a saloon with one cracked mirror, and 3 men who always seemed to know more than they admitted. Jonah heard the name before he reached the counter: Lady Maribel Ashcombe. The storekeeper said it like he was tasting a coin. A printed notice lay beside the register. It had come by rail from Denver, then by post wagon into the territory. Reward offered for the safe return of Lady Maribel Ashcombe, daughter of the late Duke of Wycliffe, believed distressed, confused, and traveling under false influence. Any citizen harboring her would be considered complicit. Below the words was a sketch. It was poor, but not poor enough. The jaw was Mara's, so a reward, $500. Jonah read the notice twice, and he saw the smaller line beneath it. Authorized agent, Mr. Silas Venn, acting on behalf of Lord Halwick, legal guardian. $500 was more money than Jonah had seen in 2 years. It would fix the roof, buy 2 mares, pay the note on the south pasture. The storekeeper leaned close. Strange business, he said. An English lady all the way out here. Some say she was taken, some say she's mad, some say she stole papers from her own kin. Jonah folded the notice back exactly as he found it. People say a lot. At the livery, he found a fresh set of horse tracks in the wet dirt. 3 riders, good mounts, eastern saddles, too clean for cattlemen. Jonah bought cartridges and left town by the long road, circling twice before heading home. Mara was standing at the cabin window when he returned. She knew before he spoke. They posted it, she said. Jonah shut the door behind him. $500. Her face went pale. That is all they think a man's conscience costs. She looked at him then, startled by the anger in his voice. Jonah placed the flower on the table. Tell me the truth. Mara stood very still. Then slowly she reached into the torn lining of her riding dress and pulled free a packet wrapped in oilcloth. The edges were smoke darkened, but the papers inside had survived. My name is Lady Maribel Ashcombe, she said. My father was English, my mother was American. When she died, she left me shares in a silver claim north of Santa Fe and water rights along a proposed rail spur. My father died last winter. My uncle became my guardian, Lord Halwick. She laid the packet on the table. He signed a contract to marry me to Orson Rake, a railroad investor twice my age. If the marriage happens, Rake controls the claim, the water, and everything my mother left me. If I refuse, my uncle will have me declared unstable and shipped back east under guard. Jonah looked at the papers. Legal seals, names, dates, numbers. A dowry valuation of $40,000. A mining transfer awaiting signature. A physician's statement prepared before any physician had examined her. Mara's voice hardened. I ran before they could put me on the train. I was going to meet a territorial judge in Santa Fe. I had letters proving the contract was forced. But Silas Venn found the coach route. The wreck? Not an accident. Her hand closed over the blue glove. They killed the driver. 2 passengers ran. I hid where the mail bags had been. I thought if they found me, they would make the deaths look like robbery and deliver me as the poor, confused lady from the notice. Jonah was quiet for a long time. Outside, thunder rolled over the valley. Why not tell me? Because good men are still men, she said softly. And $500 can sound like God's own answer when a roof leaks. Jonah glanced at the patched ceiling. Then he pushed the reward notice into the stove. The paper curled black. Mara watched it burn with both hands pressed to her mouth. That should have been the moment the valley became safe. It was not. By noon the next day, Jonah found tracks above the dry creek, 3 horses first, then 2 more joining from the north. The riders had not come straight to the cabin. They had circled it, measuring distance, windows, doors, and the small corral where Jonah kept his only good mare. Men who meant to ask questions rode to the front. Men who meant to take something studied the back. Jonah returned with his rifle and found Mara already tying her hair with a strip of cloth. They are here, she said, near. Then I should leave. No, if they find me under your roof, they will not treat you as a stranger. Jonah set the rifle on the table. They stopped treating me as a stranger when they put tracks on my ridge. Mara's composure cracked. You do not understand who they are. I understand men who think fear is a deed signed in their name. She looked away. I have spent my life inside rooms where everything was decided before I entered. What I wore, where I sat, whom I thanked, whom I belonged to. Running felt brave until I woke here and realized I was still letting them choose the shape of my life. Jonah softened. Then don't run. That is easy to say. No, he said. It isn't. She looked at him. Jonah's voice lowered. When my wife took sick, I rode for a doctor through a snowstorm and came back alone. After that, I told myself the world takes what it wants and a man survives by not reaching for anything. That was not peace. It was surrender dressed like wisdom. The cabin held the silence between them. Then Mara nodded once. What do we do? Jonah opened the oilcloth packet and studied the papers. We give them something they did not plan for. At dusk, Silas Venn came to the cabin. He rode a gray horse and wore a black coat too fine for the dust. 2 men waited behind him with rifles across their saddles. Venn removed his hat as if arriving for supper. Mr. Vale, he said. Jonah stood on the porch. Don't recall giving you my name. Venn smiled. Names are easy to purchase. Behind the curtain, Mara stood in shadow with one hand over her ribs. Venn's eyes moved once toward the window. We are seeking a young woman under lawful protection, he said. She is unwell, impressionable. Her family is desperate. No young women here. That is unfortunate. Venn looked at the cabin, the corral, the split wood by the door. A man alone can be tempted into foolish charity. We would not wish charity to become obstruction. Jonah did not answer. Venn reached into his coat and took out a folded paper. $500 for cooperation, $50 for information, prison for interference. Jonah looked at the paper. You write that yourself? Venn's smile thinned. One of the riders spat into the dust. From inside the cabin came a faint sound, a cough. Venn heard it, so did his men. Jonah's hand moved toward his rifle, but Venn lifted one finger. Careful, if she is here, every bruise on her becomes your doing. Every lie she tells becomes your influence. Every dead man from that coach becomes part of your story. The threat was clean, practiced. Jonah understood then why Venn was dangerous, not because he carried a gun, because he carried paper. And paper could make a lie stand up in court wearing a clean shirt. The curtain moved. Mara stepped into the doorway. She was pale, bruised, and wearing Jonah's old coat over her torn dress. But she stood straight enough to make the men shift in their saddles. Hello, Mr. Venn, she said. For the first time, Venn lost the shape of his smile. Lady Maribel, thank God. Do not use God to decorate this. His eyes sharpened. You have caused a great deal of concern. I have caused inconvenience. There is a difference. One of the riders laughed under his breath. Venn did not. My lady, you are injured, confused. Your uncle has empowered me to return you safely. My uncle empowered you to retrieve property. Mind your words. I am. The air tightened. Venn leaned forward in his saddle. You have no witnesses out here, no judge, no telegraph, no family. Only a poor rancher who can be ruined before breakfast. Mara's hand trembled. Jonah saw it, so did Venn. And that was almost enough to break the moment. Then Mara lifted the torn blue glove. The silver hawk and key caught the last light. I have proof, she said. Venn stared at the glove as if it had become a pistol. Mara continued, stronger now. The letters are copied. One set is here. One is already addressed to Judge Bellamy in Santa Fe. If I disappear, Mr. Vale rides them to town. If he disappears, the storekeeper in Blackthorn Station has seen your notice, your name, and your riders. If you drag me away, I will make enough noise that every miner, teamster, widow, and drunk between here and the rail line will know an English lord hired men to steal his niece for a railroad contract. Venn's face hardened. You overestimate how much the territory cares. No, Mara said. You underestimate how much men hate being lied to when blood has already been spilled on their road. For a long second, only the wind moved. Then Venn smiled again, but this time it did not reach his eyes. This is not finished. It is for tonight, Jonah said. Venn looked at him with quiet hatred. Then he turned his horse. His riders followed. They did not go far. That night, Jonah and Mara did not sleep. At midnight, smoke slid under the cabin door. Jonah woke already moving. A rag had been pushed against the back wall and lit. Flames crawled up the dry boards near the woodpile. He kicked the door open and fired one shot into the dark. A rider cursed. Hooves scattered. Mara stumbled outside coughing, clutching the packet to her chest. Jonah beat the flames with a wet blanket until the boards hissed and blackened but held. In the smoky starlight, Mara looked at the burned wall, then at Jonah. "Tomorrow," she said. He understood. No hiding. No hiding. At first light, they rode to Blackthorn Station together. Mara wore her torn riding dress, cleaned as best it could be, Jonah's coat and the single blue glove on one hand. Her face was bruised, her hair was pinned badly. She looked nothing like a portrait, and more like the truth. That made her harder to dismiss. Ven was already in town. He had reached the telegraph office before them and brought the deputy marshal to the street. A small crowd gathered near the general store. Men wanted spectacle. Women wanted answers. The storekeeper wanted no trouble but watched harder than anyone. Ven pointed at Jonah. "That man is harboring a distressed woman and interfering with lawful family authority." The deputy looked uncertain. He was young, and Ven's papers were impressive. Mara rode forward. "I am Lady Maribel Ashcombe," she said, loud enough for the street. "I am not distressed. I am not confused. I am not property." A murmur went through the crowd. Ven stepped closer. "My lady, please, this public display only proves. It proves I have a voice." She took the oilcloth packet from Jonah and held it up. "Inside these papers is a marriage contract signed without my consent, a physician's statement declaring me unstable before I was examined, and a transfer of my mother's silver and water rights prepared for Orson Rake. There is also a sworn letter naming Silas Ven as the man who followed my coach before the attack at Blackthorn Wash." Ven's riders moved. Jonah moved too. Rifle low but ready, the deputy finally found his spine. "Nobody touches anyone." Mara turned to the storekeeper. "Sir, you read the reward notice yesterday?" The storekeeper swallowed. "I did." "It named Mr. Ven?" "It did." "It called me confused?" "Yes, ma'am." She faced the crowd again. "If I were confused, they would not need 5 armed men, false notices, and a burning wall to bring me home. That landed not with thunder, with something better, recognition." A miner near the hitching rail spat into the street. "She's got a point." A woman from the laundry stepped beside Mara's horse. "Let her speak." Then another. Then 3 more. Ven saw the shape of the town changing around him. Paper worked best in quiet rooms. It grew weaker under too many eyes. The deputy took the packet. "I'll wire Santa Fe," he said. "Until a judge answers, nobody's taking her anywhere." Ven stared at Mara. "You have no idea what you are giving up." Mara looked at the dusty street, the water tower, the burned cuff of her dress, Jonah's steady hand on the reins. Then she smiled, not because it was easy, but because the choice was finally hers. "That is the first honest thing anyone has said to me," she answered. "I am giving it up." Ven left before noon. His riders followed because men like that did not enjoy crowds once the crowd had names, dates, and witnesses. 3 days later, a telegram came from Santa Fe ordering Lady Maribel Ashcombe to appear voluntarily before Judge Bellamy and forbidding any forced removal from the territory until the matter was heard. It was not victory, not yet, but it was room to breathe. Jonah rode with her to the edge of town where the Santa Fe road began. Her papers were safe, her name was her own. Her future was still uncertain, but it no longer belonged entirely to men who spoke for her. Mara looked back toward Blackthorn Valley. "Your roof is still leaking," she said. Jonah almost smiled. "It knows. I could have it repaired." "I know. I did not mean as payment." "I know that too." The wind moved between them, softer than before. Mara took off the blue silk glove. It was torn, burned at the edge, and stained with the dust of the wash. She folded it once and placed it in Jonah's hand. "I hated this thing," she said. "It was made for rooms where I was expected to sit still. But it saved my life because you noticed it. Jonah looked at the glove. No, he said, you saved your life by keeping your hand moving. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. Weeks passed before the court finished with Lord Howick's papers. The marriage contract was suspended. The physician's statement was thrown out. The mining transfer was frozen until a proper hearing could be held. Orson Rake lost more than a bride. He lost the quiet theft he had mistaken for business. Mara did not return east, not right away. She came back to Blackthorn Valley with legal work still ahead of her, money she refused to use as a chain, and a stubborn wish to learn how a life felt when no one arranged it for display. She learned the pump. She burned bread twice. She mended the south fence badly, then better. Jonah learned to set 2 cups on the table without thinking. The cabin changed in small ways first. A second chair pulled closer to the stove. A stack of legal papers beside the seed catalog. A blue silk glove hanging near the door, not as a relic of nobility, but as proof that even the smallest movement can call someone back from the edge. Far away, titles still mattered. Contracts still moved. Men with clean cuffs still believed they could name a woman helpless and make the world agree. But in Blackthorn Valley, when the evening wind crossed the wash and touched the cabin walls, Mara no longer heard it as warning. She heard it as open space. Survival had brought her to Jonah's door. Courage had carried her into the street. But choice was the thing that made her stay.